The first thing is that Atomic DEX is a non-custodial wallet and platform and exchange. So there's no registration process, but it's applicable to all DEXs. And yeah, the second aspect is that trading is peer-to-peer. So everything is executing directly between users. There's no some central servers or an intermediary or some our servers. And that's one more aspect. Now, another thing is that there is no KYC procedures. It's this current regulation landscape. And yeah, that's a very important factor as well. And critical and crucial aspect to me is that Atomic DEX is open source by nature, and we're not collecting user data, and it can be proven because you can check the source code. And yeah, I think it's very important.
And the last question about the functionality I would like to ask, because there are many questions about your project, guys, and so I would love to cover all of them, but I think the last question about the functionality I would like to ask is about some additional features like lending, staking, other decentralized functionalities. What are your plans? What do you provide right now? What do you plan to provide? So please tell more about additional functionality.
I'll go ahead and take that one. Yeah, so at the moment, the Atomic DEX is first and foremost a non-custodial wallet, and it also is a cross-chain DEX. So you can use it to trade assets between blockchains. Now, there's quite a few interesting things on the roadmap, and you can actually look at them yourself if you head over to roadmap.komodoplatform.com. And I'll go over some of them. We are including in the research and also in development NFT wallet support for the Atomic DEX. Some other cool things that are coming down the pipeline are AI-powered metrics. We are also working on a DEX reputation index, and we're exploring integration of traditional DeFi tools into the Atomic DEX. Kadan in a previous podcast mentioned this. Basically looking at things that we can integrate that are already widely adopted, like AMMs, staking, lending, and seeing how, the idea is to make the Atomic DEX like the go-to app. So you don't have to use multiple apps to do certain things. You could basically go into the Atomic DEX and, fulfill all the trading needs or any needs that you might have from a wallet within the app. So in essence, we're basically trying to explore connecting the Atomic DEX to other major players in the crypto space.
Mm-hmm. That's really impressive. And regarding atomic swaps themselves, I would like to know, how do you guys handle potential issues or scenarios where an atomic swap fails or encounters a problem during the transaction? Are those issues? So how do you handle them? Or do they really happen on your platform? What do you can say about?
Absolutely. I'll take that one if you guys don't mind. So, I'll not bullshit you and say, oh no, this never happens, and come back with no. So let's be honest, that straight, yes, these issues happen where a swap, doesn't execute, because again, this isn't based on some semi-centralized liquidity pool where the funds just sit on one key that's, technically rug pullable by some dev, etc., etc. So it's different. In Atomic DEX is 100% non-custodial, not just your wallet and the part where before you deposit your funds into the liquidity pool, but the whole process. So from the wallet perspective down to the DEX and DeFi perspective, 100% non-custodial. So you control the funds throughout the entire process. You actually have like to sign every single like transaction that's part like of an atomic swap, and there is like this atomicity, like is always ensured. This like plays such a big role in our decks, because let's assume I want to like trade with you, Maria, and let's say like you have like some Dash, I have like some Komodo. We agree on a price, specific volume and all these things, and we run through like the order negotiation process. We agree and we say let's do it, right? Okay, what happens like after this point is that we'll have, I'll keep it simple here. There's like a smart contract which will basically state like every party's like promise, and as it's already in the name of an atomic swap. Atomicity, what does this mean in layman's terms? It means like the all or nothing principle. So if the swap fails, there's going to be like a full refund. None of the other parties able kind of like to take any benefit like of this swap or this transaction, unless both sides fulfill their promise, right? So there's like time constraints, there's certain kind of like private information that needs to be revealed on a blockchain. And once, all these kind of like, conditions, these requirements are fulfilled, and Matt, that's where we say, okay, the swap is complete. And that's where the transactions will, actually like, be able to be triggered so that the funds reach both sides. And so again, it's all or nothing to answer your question, right? If there's a fail, if there's a protocol issue, if your charge goes zero while you're like in such a trade, no worries. Like the protocol will ensure that after a certain timeout, you'll have your money back and the other party as well. Right? And otherwise, it's gonna be like a successful trade, So we can say kind of like, we removed like the counterparty risk, right? Like, and not just like this. We kind of say, okay, there might be issues where a swap fails, many potential scenarios. Let's look like at Solana, for example. Let's imagine that's like overloaded. You're hitting a transaction during that time, right? Like someone shilled you like an NFT. You thought, let's go, and bam, there you are now, right? What do you do, right? They don't accept any additional transactions. Network is like, stuck, and a swap is not possible to be executed. Well, you'll just like get your money back, if 4 hours like pass now in this specific example. But I hope this kind of like describes the issue, and I just want to like highlight that if a protocol, if a DEX, if any like DeFi app says, oh, it's not possible, right? Like to have to face potential issues, even with the potential highlighted, right? Then again, I'm sorry for my wording, they're like fucking bullshitting you.
Yeah, thanks for such a detailed explanation of this, and it ensures that my transaction will be secure, and that's really a really cool thing. And I would like to move to the technology part, because technologies are very interesting from that perspective. So I would like to talk more about what technologies or protocol do you guys use in the back end of Atomic DEX. So how do you facilitate atomic swaps and other functionalities?
Absolutely. Okay, guys, this is the last one. I'll let you like next, but since you touch us like on the key tech aspect. So like, in general, like when you ask like, like, what techs or kind of like what underlying, like functionalities do we utilize to give this, functionality, this atomicity, like the atomic swaps as such and everything that's based on it. So as the key technology stack and programming language, right? Like to make it like more simple, we use like Rust, right? Like I'd say it's like one of the only. Yeah, I know, and that's a great thing, right? That's why I'm also like a Dash user. But I believe that's one of the few kind of like really natively Web3 compatible technology stacks. And obviously, like WebAssembly plays like a super huge role, like with the Atomic DEX core, like the backend, the API stack. From a principle, like kind of like architecture perspective, I've mentioned, right, like peer-to-peer. That kind of like ensures our like permissionless like decentralization. And obviously, like, I mean, the core cryptographic stack, right? Like the ECDSA, various, configs, like, and setups within like the core crypto stack, smart contracting like a functionality such, let's say, it all depends really like on the core protocol. So for BTC and Dash and Komodo, it would be like, HTLCs, right? Like the hash time, like lock, like contract, which basically like, thanks to the underlying kind of like BTC script, which allows this kind of like low level, it's like a condition that you're able like to code, right? Like, and these requirements that I was talking about earlier when it was about like the core atomic swap protocol. So, but at the same side, I mean, in time, we've also like said that we're like protocol agnostic. So we can't just use, like this, the one side. This means we also like utilize Solidity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like based smart contracts. One specific interface from Atomic DEX is so-called like atomic interface. Obviously like for Ethereum, which simulates, like these HTLCs, right? Like the multi-signature functionalities, like stuff that's not natively, possible on many like protocols. And these few tech stacks, let me think, the ones now I've mentioned, that's really like on the core, on the core, on the backend protocol. That's kind of like what we utilize, what we like kind of base and build this like on.
Mm-hmm. So you guys use smart contracts, right?
As well, yes.
Yeah, and how can you explain the role of smart contracts in all these things? I'm not sure I I understood you very well because I'm not that techie.
Okay,
But
sure.
for technical persons here, can you please explain how do you the role of smart contracts or scripting languages in the backend?
Absolutely. So they technically enable like the atomic swap and the atomicity like as such, right? Like without smart contracts, we couldn't define the various variables or the conditions, right? Like to put it like a bit simple, like in tech terms, we couldn't just do this. We could like have one-way transactions. So I could send you coins, you could send them to me, and it would be based like on trust, once again.
Mm-hmm.
But what smart contracts, right? Like any type of smart contracts. They could be BTC based, this BTC script thing. It could also be like old school Solidity contract that implements and simulates an HTLC interface, right? So it really doesn't matter. The same, obviously, on other like protocols, on other like implementations. One example, we've just like implemented IBC stack capabilities within Atomic DEX, and that kind of bridges this whole tech stack like over like to Cosmos, to that like ecosystem, to that community. And in that case, like for example, there were already like pre-existing like functionalities, but someone went ahead and implemented basically what we see, within like the HTLC, like BTC equivalent, right? Like if you want to put it like that. And again, all these like various functionalities. So it doesn't matter like what we use at the end of the day. I guess the concept is pretty much language stack, protocol, blockchain agnostic as well, right? Like, so the concept of an HTLC, you could like probably replicate this on most slash all, like various like protocols and technologies, specifically if they're like Turing complete, obviously. And here again, without them, we could not, like, I mean, it's actually in the name. It says smart contract, right? Like a contract. We could not create a blockchain-based, like agreement in a decentralized and trustless fashion without smart contracts. They really give us like the needed like interface, this core functionality. So in this specific case, just to go a slightly bit deeper into the tech and not have it too abstract. So hash and like time lock. So that's basically where you can like you have like two variables, right? Two like layers you can arrange a contract around in terms of conditions that need to be met. So one is like the hash. So the hash can be a secret, something someone needs to reveal on chain. And that's the only way to prove that you've like issued or a transaction or done something on chain. It doesn't necessarily need to be related to crypto, to money, to coins. This could be like encrypted data. This could relate to a lot of like other things, just like to clarify this. And the other one besides the hash is like the time here. The time, like is basically a certain, moment that you can define to until a certain like requirement needs to be fulfilled or not fulfilled, and these kind of like core functionalities or these capabilities in terms of like, defining constraints, defining like conditions, requirements is what is like needed. And thanks to smart contracts, to BTC script, etc., we are able like to implement, like this kind of like interface and, remove the counterparty risk. And yeah, that's what they're essentially like needed for, like, to create trustless, basis like within this tech stack.
Mm-hmm. That's really wow. Cool. Any plans or ongoing developments in the back end of Atomic DEX to introduce new features or improve existing functionalities in that case?
Yeah, I think we touched upon some of those things. If you head over to the roadmap, you actually see the roadmap's pretty extensive for this year. And we've added not only general milestones, but we've also added R&D section. So we're actually researching quite a few things. I think the idea of the team is to polish the app as much as possible, to have as many integrations as possible, to make it like an all-in-one wallet, right? To where you use the Atomic DEX and you don't have to leave the Atomic DEX to access anything else. And yeah, I think I had mentioned some of the things that are really cool, but currently some of the current things we're working on are the integration of the fiat on ramp. We are also in the upcoming milestones. We're going to be working on trading bot compatibility. The NFT compatibility, Lightning Network integration for the Atomic DEX web and mobile, which is actually a pretty cool feature that we recently added to the core. Ledger supports a hardware wallet support, and the DEX reputation index, browser wallet extension, so that it'll be more similar. It'll be more familiar to the people who have been using it, like MetaMask and whatnot. So there's quite a few things coming up in the roadmap. And again, if you want to see it for yourself, you can just go to roadmap.komodoplatform.com and go through the milestones and some of the upcoming stuff for this year.
So thanks a lot for explaining all this. And I know we have a question from Joel. Hey.
Hey, how's it going? I did have one, I guess, technical, but also more conceptual question. I guess the point of decentralized exchanges, over centralized exchanges, is always censorship resistance. And one thing we've noticed recently, especially in the EU, we've seen a lot of delistings from major exchanges of specifically privacy-focused coins, and including Dash. And so I guess it's more of in a hypothetical scenario of that, how is Komodo, how's the Atomic DEX positioned to deal with a kind of banning instance? So, for example, where, let's just say it would be made illegal to trade Dash, Zcash, and Monero in a certain country. How would that, in the practical world, affect the usage of the DEX in those affected countries?
I mean, I'd like to just state as a basis, like we don't take a position there because it's 100% like decentralized protocol, right? So technically, we couldn't actually even like take a position. Like all we do is like we provide like some software out there for different like parties on different like like geolocations to connect with each other and to exchange data with each other. Like that's all we like do, right? Like so. We couldn't like like prevent them like from doing it, or we couldn't really like we couldn't do that, right? Like just to give a very like short and simple standpoint here, and I'll give the mic like to PTY, like who possibly like want like to add something to this. But I believe like all real DeFi protocols should have like the same answer, right? Like at the end of the day, it's like kind of preventing a certain person, like, or a certain group of people from, accessing another like decentralized protocol, such as let's say like the onion routing protocol, right? Like Tor, the Tor network, and other such like privacy focused like protocols, right? Like they technically same there. They can't just kind of like prevent certain people to access it. I mean, technically, you could obviously like add some specific conditions within the code here, just like for the tech is here, because we always say, everything's possible, nothing is impossible, right? Like, so we could certainly go ahead, change some code like within the Atomic DEX core repository that, prevents the trade of certain assets, etc., etc. But it would just take two people to remove that line, and use that modified version. Again, we're like 100% open source. The protocol is open source, and I believe like again like here. It's a tough topic, and it's a very interesting one. But yeah, I'll see if my colleagues have something to add here.
Yeah, I think expanding on what Kadan is saying, some of the strengths of being a decentralized exchange come from the reality that we're not in control of the user's funds. So anything that has to do with regulation, there's obviously things that we will have to comply with as a project, as a company, right? But the strength of the project comes in its open source. And again, what we encourage, for example, projects like Dash, projects like a few other projects that we've built the DEX for, is to launch their own DEX, right? Because this enables the project to give the control to the user. It doesn't put the responsibility on the project. It puts the responsibility on the user. And there's obviously always going to be jurisdictional restrictions depending on where you live. And, you have to comply with those. But that doesn't mean that the network as a whole is going to limit the user to that, right? So the whole idea of the Atomic DEX is, through its decentralized nature, is to empower the user, and we give the user the tools to have as much freedom as possible. Again, this doesn't mean, with regulation, it's always like a shifting. You're always shifting ground, right? So as a project, we have to make sure that we're complying to what we need to comply with, but that's not going to change that the code is going to be open source, that projects, for example, like Dash, could build their own DEX on this. They could build their own version of the Atomic DEX with their own branding, with their own rules. Maybe they can launch it in a different jurisdiction with less restrictions. So I think, at least from that perspective, that's how we're taking care of that vision that we have of giving freedom to the user, and again, being open source, being decentralized, truly decentralized, is the strength to that. It's like the core of the whole thing.
Yeah, guys, we do have many things in common, because we're also focused on privacy. We're focused on decentralization, on self-custody, community and development, and innovations and technology. As far as I know, Komodo are known for commitment to technological advances, like you guys pioneer technologies like delayed proof of work protocol, and whereas like projects like Dash introduced features like instant send and chain locks back in the day. So speaking about Komodo, so Atomic DEX is powered by Komodo, right? And from that perspective, I would like to ask about a few questions about Komodo as a whole. How do you guys differentiate yourself from other blockchain platforms in terms of developer friendly tools, documentation, support for building decentralized applications, blockchain solutions? Anyone?
Yeah, I'll touch base on it, and I'll let my colleagues just like complement it. So I mean, we do have, like a support team, like which is like on top of this, like, when it comes like to documentation. It's currently like undergoing like a full like redo and overhaul to make it like more interactive, to provide like a dev like playground sandbox. We also provide, containerized environments for quick onboarding and access of the entire technology stacks. But what's like more important is, we have always like within Git and within like the main source code distribution channel, we have up-to-date instructions, a proactive approach in supporting those who are even just interested in utilizing like the tech stack, not even like building with it, but just have interest. We have a very like proactive approach, and that's like basically, we allow a direct like communication line, with our like dev team, besides the first, second like level support. But we've built a structure where it actually even reached a phase where feedback and input from outside has influenced the technological path, development, integration, even roadmap, right? Like it's something like we constantly try to enhance as we involve the external like dev community. So you could actually argue that as an external, like dev, and someone who want to build something like on top of like the Komodo technology stack, right? You actually become part, like of the dev, like layer, and yeah, I believe like creating such an environment fuels like this organic like growth within like the dev community. It's literally like an own dev community. But yes, yeah, besides these, kind of like state of the art and usual what you'd expect from any like tech stack, we also have like this inter-social like layer which we like work on a lot. And yeah, I'll give the mic to my colleagues who possibly want to add something.
It's quite hard to add something like when technical director sharing insight on like a question about tech, because the answers so precise and comprehensive. But yeah, besides of that, we also have very active community in our Discord. So it's an action item like please join our Discord and feel free to ask your questions about tech. Feel free to try there's documentation portal we created and maintain it, and we always ready to help available. Most of the team is online in Discord, and yeah, we're always happy to assist with that.
Yeah, I wanted to add, I think, just from not a non-technical perspective of how the Komodo platform is different than other projects, is that we're really trying to foment adoption. We're trying to make it easy for projects to use the technology, and not necessarily use it to where they're promoting our project. See, because the strength of the network comes from all the participants. So, for example, Dash as a project could take the Atomic Dex and launch the Dash Dex that runs on Komodo or runs on the Atomic Dex network. It doesn't pay fees in Komodo. It doesn't force the user to do certain things that other projects have done. So that really is I believe is like the core difference, is that freedom that we give projects to build on what we've already created. And basically, join forces, right? Like we're stronger together than we are separate.
Yeah, thanks a lot for. I love your how do you guys how you guys are explaining these things. So and the more you're talking about such things, the more questions it raises. So yeah, Joel, I know you got a question or many questions.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course, many, but this is a good one. So, one thing I've noticed with when using dexes is a lot of the limitations of, for example, speed to transaction finality kind of get hidden with centralized exchanges because they're not actually interacting with the chains themselves. However, when you use a lot of dexes, however many confirmations, for example, like Bitcoin takes, starts to really become very apparent. And so one of the areas where Dash has always shined has been in the ability to provide instant finality, like within a second or two. So I guess my question is, uh, has instant transaction functionality been implemented in Komodo for Dash specifically? Do you know?
Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
Oh yeah, so that's a great question. So in general, like right now from layer 2 solutions, we do implement Lightning Network support. The Dash Insta Send is in our radars. So like for this year, our roadmap is pretty packed, but I think we might consider this feature implementing the next year. And yeah, it's on our decks as in any other decks is transaction speed and confirmation time like depends the speed and time of the swap. And yeah, that's why we're placing a huge bet on layer 2 solutions to like change the experience and make it much more faster and smooth for the end users. And for sure, like a Dash Instant Send, like a feature is very popular, and there's been a demand of our users, and I'm sure that in future we will add it.
Hey, looks like yeah. So all right, I think we're guys time is almost up, and we got a couple of questions from our listeners and from Dash users, and I think it's time to answer to them if you don't mind. So I got a question from Dash Discord, and the question is that I connected the CrowdNode team with Komodo team a few months ago. Are we going to see Dash staking in a future release of Atomic DEX? If so, when? What do you guys think about the integration of CrowdNode?
I know that.
Yes.
Oh
So
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I was just gonna say that you had talked about this before. Go ahead.
yeah, just like in speaking in general, so we do have a set of like staking, validation, like delegation, like integrations like planned for the coming like months in terms of like R&D. We have not set a timeline around it. So I would be lying if I was gonna like tell you, oh yes, end of the year or whatever. Like, but we definitely like will integrate like staking solutions there, depending on the scope of protocol. I mean, there's like like a native staking like tech stacks which require some computational resources, etc., etc. They have constraints, but we do analyze, evaluate like the various like protocols, their kind of compatibility with a low resource environment such as a mobile phone or a web browser, and then we go from there. But as now for Dash specifically, we will definitely like look into this as it's in general like deemed a priority.
Yeah, I want to welcome the Dash team and the Dash developers also to get in contact with us. There's things that we could do in tandem that would shorten such an integration. So yeah, I mean, have them reach out to us, and like Kadan said, we usually work off things by priority. So if it's something that's useful to the Dash community, and we see value in it, we'll definitely go after it.
That sounds amazing. Thank you, guys, and I think we will push this forward in the nearest future. And thank you for answering that question. Another question comes from Twitter account Yoda the Frog, and they are asking. They're telling that without a solution for the liquidity issue, Atomic DEX will never reach mainstream. So when you guys are gonna solve the liquidity issue?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, since I know Yoda, I'll take that one if you guys don't mind. So, I mean, first of all, the liquidity problem as such, it's more like a technological problem, or well, not a problem, kind of like an obstacle. Let's put it like this at this point of time, because we haven't like tagged the core network stable as such. This means we don't feel comfortable with like onboarding, potential LPs. and professional like trading parties that we already collaborate with. This really goes from like professional like LP and market making firms down to like crypto OG traders and liquidity providers, right? In addition, the core protocol, and if you're gonna check the Atomic DEX like roadmap, you'll realize we have various like protocol extensions and enhancements coming in the coming months. One of them, for example, includes trading type, like that, like facilitates a different type of trade. So we're looking and investigating, possibilities for, futures like trading and trade that provides enhanced like security in terms of like protocol efficiency. These are all things we want to complete prior to just like to focus on the LP side of things. And one key item here is bot trading and general like LP interface, right? Like these are additional like capabilities and functionalities which we already have like ran proof of concepts for, that we have already designed, that we have planned, but they do require implementation, right? We have the protocol designed, we have like the key work done, and we believe it would be wrong to already like tag the network kind of like stable, production ready, and start kind of like hyping it, right? I mean, specifically on a DEX or any DeFi protocol, and anyone's in the call is going to agree, right? You'd be able to boost the volumes, wash trade, etc., etc. I mean, we're like the key operator like of this protocol, right? Like, and we take this with a very kind of like, serious, responsible, and ethical approach. And I think that's like key for like long-term sustainability. In addition, we have a protocol like feature which is called like liquidity multiplier, now referring like to a specific like LP problem solution that was designed by our like founder like James Lee, and that basically allows you to reuse liquidity for multiple assets. What does this mean? This means like let's take a very like simple example, right? Let's say I've got like I've got like one Dash in my wallet. I'm able, like to take the Dash and create the order against like any like, pair, let's say like BTC. And as long as that order isn't like filled or partially filled, I'm able to set up another order with that one Dash, right? And I can do this like and as many times as I want. I could like technically I could create basically like like thousands to like millions of like order book depths of like Dash, just like with that one Dash. And what will happen is like that as soon as someone like matches with that like order and executes, saddles, and like basically completes and finalizes that order, it will either reduce or remove the other orders. So first comes, first serves, right? Like kind of like that principle. And we figured that's first of all, it creates a certain like efficiency, because many like orders out there, and this is something like you'd face like in many exchanges, liquidity would be like sitting there, right? Like specifically like with times of reduced volatility, etc., etc. If you're not a bot trader, orders will literally like be there waiting, like to be, like matched against and like executed. So we figured like, yeah, just like basically allow this logical, thing that's based on common sense to like reuse it as long as it's available. Because again, this is like decentralized 100%, like, and it's a little bit like Schrodinger's cat principle from the quantum mechanics, right? Like, so we like the order is there. We don't know if it's like, well, actually we know if it's matched or not, right? Like, but until it is matched, you can have like thousands or millions like of these like orders utilizing the same liquidity.
All right. Thanks a lot for such a detailed explanation, and I hope that answers the other's question. And I think we got the last question from from Yoda, and well, let's get creative and think about the future. And what do you think? Will it be possible in future to make a swap without running Atomic DEX? Kind of
Does that
philosophical.
mean like, yeah, I think,
Yes.
yeah, this is something that the team has been speaking about. I think what they mean is like having the Atomic DEX online at all the time, right? And yeah, the idea is to develop a solution where the user would be able to execute the trade and basically just go offline. go do whatever they want. They come back, the trade's executed. I don't know if Tony or Kadan, is there a date specifically for that? I know you guys were researching it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this quarter, we've already actually like completed, like the proof of concepts for this. So there's like a check mark on this, and we plan to work on it the coming quarter or Q4, if I'm not mistaken. We believe it's like an essential like feature, to kind of, provide or give the user the option. And here again, like with full transparency, I'm gonna add that this will require a small degree of trust, but into the network, not into like a party or a specific person, because you'll have the network as a co-signer for like this these trades and these swaps, so you can like go basically off. And yeah, that's something that's like definitely like on the roadmap and in the works.
Yeah, so the way, just to expand a little bit on that, so the way that the atomic swaps work is it's a series of transactions. So the wallet, once it executes the transaction and it matches the order, then it has to sign transactions every step, right? So the idea is basically that you would tell the protocol, you know what, go ahead and sign those transactions. You could go offline. The protocol itself will complete the steps for you. But like Kadan said, it's a different. I don't want to say it's either less trustworthy. It's just an option that the user will be able to select to complete swaps offline. Make it more user friendly.
That's cool. That's very interesting, and I think, well, yeah, let's see how it goes in the future. Anyway, I like the idea. So, well, yeah, I think it's time to wrap it all up. And I'm really happy to have you guys here, and it's a pleasure to know that you guys support Dash, and we both, we have many things in common, and we all are standing for transparency, for self-custody, for community-driven projects. And this is really cool, and this is really, really nice, and I'm eager to make cross promotional or maybe cross technological projects with you guys. And I think both our projects will take a huge place in the near future in the crypto industry. And thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for such detailed explanations. And I learned many things about decentralized exchanges today. And many listeners today have learned many things that can be useful to understand better how things work in this industry. Thank you guys for coming. And if to all our listeners, if you have some questions to the Atomic DEX team, to Dash team, please find us all on our social media channels. And we're always open to answer to all of your questions.